we've seen this movie before. All right, for years, Republicans warned that Washington should not use housing policy to reshape communities from the top down. They warned about federal pressure on suburbs. They warned about bureaucrats sticking their fingers into local zoning, local development, local priorities. The GOP told us for years that local mattered, that markets mattered. They told us that conservatives were the last line of defense against centralized planning, and now they're standing shoulder to shoulder with Elizabeth Warren on a major housing bill and calling it reform. That's a letdown. And you need to understand this hands more power over your local neighborhoods to the federal government. And here's maybe a bigger issue. The housing debate keeps getting framed as though Americans' main problem is just that there are not enough houses. There's not enough supply, right? But that's too convenient because it lets politicians pretend that the answer is always more federal nudging, more subsidy, more intervention, more market manipulation. But the market is actually telling a more complicated story. Inventory has been rising. Listings have been rising. Pricing growth has cooled. Reuters reported this week that active inventory has been climbing and that the market has been loosening, even as many still argue the country remains underbuilt over the long run. That means the picture is not simply there are no homes. The picture is that prices, financing, and policy distortion have kept the market from clearing naturally. We're still coming down from our COVID high. And that's the part Republicans do not want to say out loud. The problem is not just supply. The problem is that the market is not being allowed to correct itself. And that's what I think makes this so frustrating, because a correction is not an evil thing, economically speaking. A correction is how bad pricing gets fixed. A correction is how fake value gets washed out. That would bring down inflation, by the way. A correction is how affordability actually comes back. A correction is how dollars stop getting torched by years of asset inflation and market distortion, but nobody in power wants to allow that. Why? Because corrections are politically painful. Because falling home values make voters nervous. Because major donors, asset holders, lenders, developers, and everyone whose net worth is tied up in inflated housing prices hates the idea of the market coming back down to earth. So instead, what do we get? Well, another bipartisan quote-unquote solution. Another federally managed rescue. Another round of policies aimed at cushioning, stretching, and delaying the very correction that the market probably needs. They keep calling it housing reform, but a lot of what Washington really wants is price protection, and price protection for their favored donors.